Editing is the process of selecting and preparing written, photographic, and cinematic material that are used by people to convey a message or information. The editing process can involve correction, condensation, organisation, and many other modifications performed with an innovation of producing a correct, consistent, accurate, and complete sense of work. The editing process often begins with the author's idea for the work itself, continuing as a collaboration between the author and the editor as the work is created. Editing can involve creative skills, human relations, and a precise set of methods. This documentary serves to discuss the beginning of editing, how far it's come over the years, how easy but detailed it is now, and the importance of editing to the film industry. Back in 1890, Thomas Alva Edison invented the first motion graphic projector along with his assistant William Laura Dixon. This projector was called the kinetograph and used celluloid film to create the first motion pictures. These pictures could be cut like in today's editing software, but it was only in the initial 19s that it was introduced, where people used scissors and tape to physically trim unnecessary footage. This was continued until the invention of the first editing machine. The first editing machine was invented in 1924 by a man by the name of Iwa Soria, of which he named this machine Muvoila, and this new editing machine was used to edit and trim the unwanted scenes in the selected clip. This machine is even still used today, and used majorly in Hollywood. Back in 1934, the Academy Awards introduced the film editing category in the list, and the Oscars are considered one of the highest awards in Hollywood, where everyone is honoured for their spectacular work. So naturally, this is a big deal in the history of editing. The first Oscar for film editing was given to Conrad A. Nervig for his excellent contribution to the movie Eskimo. In 1956, the industry got its first video recorder named Ampex, also being the first device to use magnetic tape to record a video. This brought a new revolution in the industry and changed the entire way of how videos were recorded. The industry then changed the entire way of how videos were recorded. Moving on, the first non-linear computerized machine was invented in 1971 called the CMX600. Being used for offline editing, it received the Emmy Award for its contribution to the industry. However, it doesn't work without disk drives, which were the size of a washing machine, making it less than portable. Then we hit the period of revolutionary invention between 1985 and 1991, which was between these 6 years that the video industry saw the introduction and invention of some of its most popular softwares, beginning with the invention of Harry in 1985 by Quantel. Harry was the first all-rounder video editing and digital compositing system. However, due to technological limitations, Harry was only capable of applying effects to the maximum of 80 seconds of uncompressed 8-bit video. Just after 2 years, in 1987, Apple launched the Avid Media Composer, not being the first non-linear editing software, but it was revolutionary design that is still in existence today. Then in 1991, Adobe came with its first video editing software, Premiere Pro. Today it's become the industry-leading software for video editing. I mean, the software is widely used across the globe by beginners and professionals alike. Post-production editing is another area in which digital trumps the usage of film. Adding visual effects to film was often a precise art, one of which the effect had to blend seamlessly with what was being shot. This was a painstaking process that editors thankfully no longer have to endure. Digital effects are created and added to a shot within the same program or family of programs. Furthermore, this same software allows editors to work on entire sections of films, allowing them to easily piece scenes together after the post-production's effects are added in. This also includes audio, which now has a high-definition digital file that ensures that the audience of the film will in fact be able to hear every word spoken and action taking place in the film that they are currently watching. The end result today is that the evolutions of technology, films look cleaner with effects that blend smoothly with the movie. In the industry, there are many big names that most people wouldn't think to actually have as big of an impact on the editing scene as one might think. I mean, James Cameron is a good example of this, being a film director, screenwriter, producer, environmentalist, and of course, an editor. Best being known for films about science fiction, Cameron first gained recognition for directing The Terminator in 1984, finding further critical and commercial success in famous films like Aliens, Terminator 2 Judgment Day, True Lies, Titanic, Avatar, and the list just goes on. I mean, Cameron's films have grossed approximately $2 billion in the US alone and $6 billion worldwide. Avatar and Titanic are the second and third most grossing films of all time, earning $2.78 billion and the $2.19 billion as of 2020. Next is Marcia Lucas, an Oscar-winning American editor who was known for her work in the early 1970s. Films of Martin Scorsese. Lucas won the editing award for Best Film Editing in 1977 for Star Wars, which was written and directed by her husband at the time. She was nominated for an Academy Award for her film editing on American Graffiti and for a BAFTA Award for Best Editing on Taxi Driver after a career gap while raising her own family. Then in 1990, she went on to produce 2 more films. Last but not least is Matthew Schmidt, another American film editor, being best known for his work on several Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, these being Captain America: The Winter Soldier, Captain America: Civil War, Avengers: Infinity War, and Avengers: Endgame. Avengers: Infinity War was the 19th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, marking the third collaboration for Ford and Schmidt, with the Russo brothers directing the other 2 film collaborations are Captain America: The Winter Soldier and Captain America: Civil War. Schmidt first worked with Ford as an assistant editor, beginning with the first Avengers film, and started sharing the editing credit with Ford, beginning with Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Together they edited Avengers Endgame and Avengers Infinity War back to back, as it became a 2-year project, sometimes even editing parts of the film while scenes were still being shot. More than 900 hours of film was shot between 2 films, making the editing process a massive undertaking. However, films rank among the biggest box office earners of all time. Editing is a very unique part of filmmaking because the post-production segment is arguably the most creative part of the entire process, as it allows you to really bring everything into place and bend it to how you want it to look, sound, feel, and how it all just joins together. In a way of speaking, without the ability to edit, there is no film. However, this doesn't mean that the process is easy. It's an art form that has no limits. As technology continues to advance, new tools and softwares change the game dramatically, and thus editing techniques are born, ways of conveying something to the audience without them even knowing. A good example of this is montages. A montage is an editing technique that signifies the passage of time or helps to give an overall context to a story with quick cuts, being often used to see athletics training or preparing for a big match in montages, but this can really be used for almost any transformation by character and normally underscored by music. Next is match cut, which is an edit that gives context and continuity to a scene, pushing it in a certain direction without disorientating the viewer. Editors use it to either move between scenes or move around a space while keeping everything coherent. A basic example is shooting someone opening a door from behind and then cutting to the opposite side as they walk through it. Another technique is cutting on action, which is as it sounds. You cut to the point of action because that's what our eyes and brains are naturally expecting. When someone kicks open a door or smashes a window, we expect to see the change in angle. When the door is kicked or the window is shattered, not after the door's flown off its hinges and the swaying glass is fallen on the floor and settled. Okay, so first I got all my clips in here into my media browser. I put them all in to where I want them to be, and then I first found out when I was just behind that wall there, cut that out. So then I walk into frame, I drop the glass, and then I want to cut it out just as the glass drops. And in the next frame, I want to make sure that you can see it full, just as the glass has just fallen and crashed on the ground. And then you put them right next to each other, play it back, and you get this. I'm walking up, I'm on the phone, I look in front of me, shocked, drop glass, cut, smash. There, perfect.
One thing that I always assume that I'm going to really detest, but then end up getting totally addicted to, is masking, is animating masks around things, which, is totally mundane, but an essential part of visual effects editing and something that's really important to get right. So even though it's not the most kind of visually interesting thing, it's sometimes the thing that makes your effects really work. Horror. Mainly because that's my favourite genre of film, but I really like kind of exploring the ways in which you can pace the edit in order to create a sense of unease or to try and scare people, and I think that's a really kind of interesting thing to get into psychologically through necessity, really, because most of the films I've ever made have been made completely independently with no money whatsoever. So it kind of spawned out of having to do the visual effects myself in order to get something made. And from that kind of just grew and got more and more interested, kind of, learned new skills and developed as I went along. So it spawned out of that. But Ray Harryhausen really inspired me when I was a kid to kind of work out how you did this stuff. The skeletons fighting people, you've got these sort of small skeletal maquettes fighting a kind of, a live action person, and that really inspired me. I started editing, I guess, when I first started making films, and even though I didn't have access to editing equipment, I was editing in camera. So I started making films when I was 12, and I'm now 45. So I'm terrible at maths, so you can tell me how long I've been editing for. By making as much content as you possibly can. There's no other way of doing it. You need to make more stuff, and then keep expanding and improving upon what you've done. Get your work out there, get it on YouTube, send it off to film festivals, online film festivals, and build up a portfolio of work. Yeah, even if you have to work for nothing to get started, then so be it. That's what you need to do.
I implore you to think about where editing started and how far it's come. Truly, it is an art form that allows people to express their visions and bring them to life, becoming a hobby for people who can create amazing pieces of work, giving countless people jobs in the film industry, allowing small creators on platforms such as YouTube to create their own productions and reach an audience that 50 years ago would just be impossible. I believe that films today would not be nearly as impactful on people if technology hadn't come this far and taken the concept further, and it only continues to become more and more accessible and limitless, being something that someone can use basically or learn to master and use it to pave a career for themselves, creating amazing grand arts of work. It's just art. Editing is something that proves that we may not have things like hoverboards or flying cars, but that doesn't mean that we aren't living in the future.